The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, this is it, guys. This is the moment we've been waiting for. This is the beginning of our team-by-team industry pro breakdown of the results from the 9-cap mock draft. You've heard me. I went through the picks one by one, more or less. Talked about what I thought about each and every stinking one of them over the last 3 days. But today, we begin our journey through the 11 other teams in this 9-cap mock draft. We're going to talk to industry pros from across the fantasy landscape, from basically every single big fantasy analyst website. They're all coming through. This week, you will have Seth Klein and Josh Lloyd. Today and tomorrow, we will rumble into next week with Alex Ricklean. We have Kyle McCune. We have Matt Smith, also from Basketball Monster. We'll be talking to Ethan Noroff and Jonas Nader from Roto World. We're going to have Mark Roberts on the show from #Basketball. And of course, last but certainly not least, my boys, the Lords. The Lords of the Manor, the In This League guys. We're going to talk to them next week as well. This is going to be awesome. I'm so excited. I think it'll be about 10 podcasts here over the next 2 weeks where we're just going to talk to all the best and brightest, and they're going to break down why they took picks in different spots, what they learned from the mock draft, what they were able to decipher based on their positioning, where the players are going. It's all coming, and it's all coming day by day over the next 2 weeks, which is great because 2 weeks takes us to within 5 days of the start of the NBA season. It is coming. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, everybody. I am Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on Twitter. Before we jump headlong into the podcast, the deep dive stuff with Seth on today's show, again, by the way, big thank you to all of these guys for not only coming into the mock draft and spending all that time on a 3-day slow mock, but also now carving out time to come on the podcast. Before we get into it, wanted to mention again, we will have a coupon code at some point during today's podcast for the Hoop Ball Draft Guide. We've had coupon codes in every single show except yesterday because I was solo over the last 2 weeks. Those codes are embedded in the podcast somewhere. If you hear it, use it. Go to hoop-ball.com. Get the draft guide for $3 off the traditional price. All those coupon codes are basically for the same amount. And that's sweet because the draft guide is awesome. Number 2, to those of you that are finding the show for the first time, welcome. We love having you here. This is the thing that gets me the most excited during the entire season, the entire year, frankly, is knowing that new people are finding the podcast. The growth of listenership it's just wonderful. It touches my heart. So thank you. If you like what you hear, we'd love a positive review on whatever service you're using to listen to the podcast. And third, Hoop Ball is likely to run a flash sale. I've been told a flash sale that will last for 4 to 6 hours, and that is it. No coupon code needed, but suddenly the price is just going to drop precipitously and then go right back to what it was before. You just have to be ready for it. Follow at Hoopball Tweets or at Hoopball Fantasy. That's where the flash sale will be announced on Twitter. That's where these things go out. I'm going to try to retweet it, so if you're following me, hopefully you'll get that as well. And finally, last thing before we jump into the pod, Hoopball Listener Leagues. They're filling up again. We had hit this big crest, right, when we first opened them about a month ago, and then, it turns into a little bit of a lazy trickle at some point where 1 or 2 people are joining every day, but then we've had like 15 over the last 24 hours that have popped back up and wanted in on the leagues. So we were all set to basically just shut her down, fill up the remaining leagues, and then probably not open anymore. But if we're getting 10 to 15 a day here, we'll open more listener leagues. We'll do it. My good friend Neil Rochlani and co-host here on Fantasy NBA Today is handling league placement. Send a tweet to me or at Ball with Neil is his Twitter handle, BALLWITHNEIL. N-E-I-L. I stress, that's the spelling of his name. Again, you can tweet at me or Neil, and we'll get you situated. We have head-to-head, we have Roto, we have free, we have $50 leagues. There are something like 10 or 12 of them open right now. But again, we'll be happy to open another one if the interest is large enough. If it's not, then we'll just make one of the existing leagues a tiny bit bigger, right? Like if there's a 12, we'll just turn it into a 14. That's more money up for grabs if it's a cash league. I forget the exact count. Neil sent me the number a few days ago, but I know it's changed a bit. There are two ways to do it. You can tweet at us, or you can go to hoop-ball.com, click on the forums tab, and there's a Hoopball Leagues thread. You just have to post what kind of league you'd like to be in and your email address, and Neil will get you hooked up that way. Okay, I don't want to make you wait any around. We're trying to do a better job of keeping these beginning things a little bit shorter, but we had a few things to talk about today. The podcast thread is changing for the next 10 scheduled episodes, and so I wanted to make you aware of that. I love getting these guys on the show to break down their teams and all these fun things, all these topics. They just sort of come up. We plan for one thing and then we end up doing 4 others. And we're breaking down the mock draft. For those of you that are, I don't know, jumping into this one in the middle of it, I suppose we can reset the stage for you a bit. Had an industry mock draft, 9-cat roto, that brought together voices and faces and the written word from so many different spots. And, well, this next guest has been on this podcast many times before. He is Seth Klein. He is at Seth Da Sportsman, D-A, instead of the word the. Seth Da Sportsman on Twitter. And he was, of course, a part of this mock draft. And he's going to break down his team for us. But first, Seth, what's up, my man? Good to have you back.
Thanks for having me back. It's been a little bit, huh?
It's been a little bit. Yeah, how was your off season? Did an opportunity to I would say catch up on sleep, but you do baseball and football too, don't you?
Yeah. My off season was baseball and now football and working in some basketball, and that crossover is always a deadly time of year where you're drafting 2 sports, running teams with 2 sports, writing about 2 sports, podcasting about 2 sports. It's busy.
Yes, it is.
On top of everything else. Yeah.
Your baseball is wrapping up at least. That has to be. Baseball's hard, man. There's so many players at so many different levels of minor leagues to keep an eye on. Games, you have to be so cognizant of who's playing on every given night. I mean, I know that we invest a ton of time into this stuff, but to me, baseball is like it's one step too far. And I know basketball is like one small step behind it because there's games every day too, but damn, I don't know how you do it. You and the ITL guys being so deep in the baseball thing, it blows my mind.
It is grueling. Baseball is a very grueling, long journey, but I think that that's something that can set people apart. I mean, for me, I know that helps me be successful because I'll stick with it. I mean, I've never quit in a league. Like, I'll stick with it where some owners will fall off because they're bored or they're tired or something comes up or they miss 2 weeks because they're on vacation and whatever the reason is or excuse is. And perseverance and durability and just being able to stick it throughout the whole season is a pretty good way to win your league, win money, whatever it takes. And I like that part. There's no flukiness. There's no luck. You can't win a fantasy baseball roto league off pure luck. Like you have to manage your team. You can't go over the games played limits per position. These are things that you have to monitor every day. And there's nothing like we're in football. Oh, well, I had a few guys in. I got lucky. Oh, I forgot he was on a bye and I still won. But not in baseball. Nope.
No, yeah, football to me is not rewarding enough. I know that that's the fantasy king, but I've done a football fantasy team a couple of times over the last 15 years, and I just can never really get myself to care that much about it because I feel like I've got these great teams, and then one week they'll just lay an egg against the worst team in the league, and then the next week they'll play great against the best team in the league, and I end up 0-2 despite having like the second most points after those 2 weeks. I don't like it. Baseball, I think I could potentially get into, but I need that little respite from basketball. I got other things to kind of tend to here on the hoop ball side. And for me now, being able to watch baseball, not working in it, working in minor league ball made it impossible to keep track of the big leagues. Not working in it, now I can just kind of sit back and take in the joy that is baseball. Because I love baseball. That's kind of that was my first love in terms of sports growing up. So it's cool that be able to just sort of watch it again. But that's not why you're here. We can have a baseball show some other day where we're coasting through the dog days of July, and you're doing fantasy baseball, and I'm sitting here waiting for free agency to start in basketball, and then we'll talk America's pastime. Today, however, Seth is on the pod to talk about the mock draft. Industry mock. It was awesome. I had a lot of fun. Thank you, of course, Seth, to you and to everybody else for taking the time, carving the couple of days out to do the slow draft. You got stuck with, and I use this term specifically because I think it's going to lead us to another discussion, you got stuck with pick 12. You were on the turn in a 12-team 9-cat roto. But before we even get into the picks, you actually told me you were stoked to end up on the turn. You like picking dead last in, is it in all sports or just basketball? I got to know more about this.
I like it in all. And actually, I do agree that basketball, it would probably be the one where I least like to have that pick, but because I think that the top few guys are dramatically better than the 12th, 13th pick. Whereas football, I think you could draft the 15th guy. He might be as good as the first guy. You never know. Baseball, you can really get a couple solid guys. Like, do you want Mike Trout or do you want Corey Kluber and Paul Goldschmidt? That's a pretty close debate right there. So, but yeah, I like the turn. I like being able to see what other people do. I like having 2 picks in a row. I don't know. It may not be the best strategy, but in leagues where we allow draft pick trading, I almost always try to trade down to that if I have a higher pick. And I also think it's a good – and because I like that pick, I think it's a good way to leverage extra picks out of people because let's say I'm getting handed the second pick overall and someone's sitting there in 12th who, like you, might hate that pick. I'll say, hey, you want to trade up and then throw me an extra pick, maybe another third rounder or something, get an extra pick out of it, and I get a spot I like anyway. I just like being able to draft 2 in a row. I find I don't get sniped. And then, yeah, I get it. There's a long wait, in between picks, but I don't know. I just like it. I like being able to, if I have certain needs, I can address both of them.
So, okay. So I think you very clearly outlined sort of the main positive and the main negative of being in that spot. Main positive being you get 2 picks in a row. You don't have to worry about what, one other team or 2 other teams or 3 other teams are going to do twice. Obviously, if they're after you in one round, they're before you in the next. So you don't have to worry about the 2, the 4, the 6 guys that might come off the board and trying to guess which of the 2 guys you got your eye on, which of them might get back to you 5 or 6 picks later. But on the other side, like you also said, you're not going to get another pick for an eternity. I mean, especially in a slow draft, you might not pick for a day, which is crazy. So how do you balance that, I guess? Obviously, being able to get 2 guys in a row is great, but do you find that you have to do a little more what I guess we can only affectionately call reaching if you're in that spot because you just know certain guys? Like, let's say, hypothetically here, before we get into your actual picks, let's say you had your eye on someone who was ranked like 20th, and you knew that almost no matter where the rest of the people in your league had him in their own personal lists, he probably wasn't going to get back to pick 36. Would you consider taking him at 12, 13, or is that a guy where you're just like, you know what? There are other guys that I've got my eye on that are a little earlier and a little later, so I'm just going to have to be okay with the fact that this dude at 20 or 24 or whatever it is, I'm probably not going to end up with him on my team.
I'd say that early in the draft, that's not an issue for me. It's rare that there's somebody at 20, 21 in ADP or rankings that I'd rather have than someone that's ranked, anywhere from 12th to 13th, or 10th to 13th. Because I do think some players are in that 9, 10, 11 pre-draft ranking slide to the 12th or 13th pick. Mm-hmm. For me to jump 10 picks down, that's rare. I'm never going to look at Damian Lillard and say, I think I'd rather have Kevin Love. It's so that's not really happening for me. It doesn't happen for me very often. Later in the draft, when we get to the middle rounds or the later rounds, and I see a guy that maybe is sneaking up, in the draft, and for my 10th player, 9th player, yeah, I'll reach if I like the guy enough, and I know he's not going to be there next time. But that's not an issue for me early on, because usually I'm not going for a player that's that much further down, at least in the early rounds.
Do you also find that when you're making your back-to-back selections, you tend to pair guys of sort of different statistical makeup, or does that just sort of happen on its own sometimes?
It all depends, I think, who's available and where my roster's at. In this draft, I went with who did I take? Westbrook and Paul George. But that's just going with best available, I think, for me. But I did another draft. Were you in that? I don't know if you were in that. There was another one with Josh Lloyd, like a writers versus listeners one. And
I was in his other 8-cat something or another. I foolishly drafted. I drafted the first half of my team thinking it was a 9-cat league, and then found out it was 8.
Well, I know Josh doesn't like turnovers.
I know. I should have known. My head was in the clouds, man. That one's all on me.
Yeah, I hate turnovers, man. But in that league, I had also the 12th pick, which coincidentally again, and I took Drummond and Embiid. So no, I didn't really go for a separate category. I said, oh, you know what? These two are available. Obviously, I'm looking at hurting my free throw percentage a little bit there, but I'm getting blocks. I'm gonna be way ahead of everybody in rebounds for at least 4, 5, 6 rounds. So that's and field goal percentage. So it really just depends. I mean, the first round I usually just take kind of the best first couple rounds, who's the best available. But as it gets later on, it's certainly. And that's one of the reasons I like the back-to-back, is I can address multiple needs. Like I'm doing this other league where it's my home league, and let me just bring up the results.
Sure,
really
yeah.
quick. And this is like my main league every year. It's my 8th year running this league, and we're doing a slow draft as well. And I really love my team. And I like my team a lot, in general, but I'm honest, and I'll post my rosters or my draft results on Twitter. And a lot of times I'll say, I like this part of my team, but I missed out on this. So I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to go into every season after the draft and think I'm number one. I do draft well, but this team is, I'll read off my team, but I picked 5th. So this is a 9-category league, but there's double doubles instead of turnovers. So and it's deep. It's 4 bench and 3 utility. So 14 spots. And so I went 5th. I went with LeBron, and then I went with Drummond. So already 2 guys, they're double doubles, but I get the double doubles with assists for LeBron too, which kind of gives me great assists already, and they both get blocks and great field goal percentage. And then I said, well, I got Drummond. LeBron's not great at free throws either. May as well just go punt free throws at this point, which I think you can do in this type of league, because it's worth punting free throws to get double doubles.
Right, because you're able to, normally if you were punting free throws, you end up building a team that's very big man heavy, but in a standard 8 or 9-cat, most of the categories sort of veer towards the smaller guy, the high-volume little dude. But when you take one and you move it to double-double, which more in general, obviously LeBron is more the exception than the rule, favors the big man, then you're able to build a punt team that has strength in the right number of categories. So that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So going off that, I took Clint Capella with my 3rd pick. Then Mike Conley, Robert Covington, Jeff Teague, trying to beat the Butler news, and Josh Richardson and Brooke Lopez in the 8th, and we're heading into the 9th round now. So I've got blocks. I've got a lot of threes from a center like Brook Lopez. I've got assists. I'm really, really happy with my team. Other than LeBron, I don't have any prolific scorers, but I think I have guys that can put it together enough where I'll win some weeks. It's a head-to-head league. So I really like that team, and I drafted fifth, so I can't draft back-to-back guys, but had they been back-to-back, I may have picked similar players. So
interesting.
We'll see. But yeah, it can go any way, but if I see, like, let's just say I had the 12th pick and I had LeBron and Drummond, and then it came back around and I took Capella, then I'm thinking, all right, I need probably a guard here. So I'm not going to get another center because I don't need one right now. And I took Conley, but who was available? If I had the 12th pick, I would have maybe taken someone like DeRozan or Klay Thompson, who were there at that point. So it depends. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to draft in 12th. I just know that I love that pick.
That's interesting. You are a unique fellow, which is a really fun take to get. Because most people, I think, are probably on the other side of that fence. I think, for me personally, I struggle with the notion that I just, like, none of the guys that are near the top of my board are going to get back to me between rounds. So you end up getting stuck in the spot where it's like, maybe I should I grab this guy? And I think you just have to find the right point. And you mentioned kind of the middle rounds to later rounds, that right point where you start to just grab whatever guy you really are targeting, as opposed to early in the draft where, generally the ADPs are a little closer. And we've run some analysis on this on the show. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but first 2 to 3 rounds are usually not that awful. Last year, the second round had some kind of weird goose eggs in it. But as the draft moves along, as you get towards pick like 60 to 70, the ADPs start to miss by a ton. And so at that point, you just, you target the guys that you want, and you sort of don't even care what their ADP is. You go and get them, and you try to pick the guys you think have the lowest shot to get back to you first. Right. But that's a tough thing, though. That's a tough hurdle to get over, especially if you're in a fast draft where you're looking down the whole list and you're like, which of these guys is getting back? Which of these guys is going to get back to me? Oh, crap, I forgot to put a guy in a queue. And then you end up with
at that point you just want to go get your guys, because, like you said, ADP doesn't matter after maybe like the 9th round or something like that. After that, you're already going for your bench anyway. Your utility and your bench. Maybe you're filling a couple needs. You need one more guy that can get you blocks, or one more guy that can get you assists. So I found myself doing this in a few leagues this year so far. There's one player, Elfrid Payton, who, he may suck, but I think he has a chance with Anthony Davis to get assists at the very least. And so I've reached for him in a few leagues because he's, at that point, it's like, all right, I just need assists. And I know that I know he's not a great player, but I know he can get assists. I know that he can play in that lineup. And he's someone that I've just gone out of my way and maybe like the 8th or 9th round said, you know what, I'm just going to take him because there really isn't anyone else after that I can guarantee. And I know he's going to, be playing off of Drew Holiday and all that, but 5 assists seems like a pretty reasonable floor. So, and after that, the 7th, 8th round, like who are you going to guarantee that can get 5 assists? There's nobody. There's nobody else that you're like, he is getting 5 assists no matter what.
Yeah, and it looked like he almost would have ended up with him in this mock draft, and we'll get to that. He went in the slot right before you in round 9.
Right before me, and then I took Isaiah Thomas. Yeah,
yes, you did.
And so, and in that situation, I wouldn't have taken him because I had addressed assists a little bit earlier. But to that point, I'll reach there, and I think I probably reached for Thomas there too because I needed some scoring after I took George, and we're going to talk about the team later, but after my first couple players, the first 4 rounds, I addressed the next few rounds with some big men and some assists and stuff like that. So I was like, I want one more guy that can drop 18 a game. Maybe he earns a bigger role or whatever, and took a flyer on Thomas there. So plus I knew I had the next pick around, so I knew I could get whoever, literally anybody else I wanted on the board. But then I liked that. I was like, all right, I'm going to get Thomas here, and then I can get anybody else. It doesn't matter who. And like you said, instead of waiting, maybe I couldn't, if I had a middle round pick, then I'm like, all right, I got to wait. I got to take Thomas here, and then I got to wait 8 more picks to get the next guy I want, who may not be there.
Right.
At that point, just go get the guys you want. So
we're talking to Seth Klein at Seth the Sportsman. We didn't mention, by the way, that you're writing for Fantrax now, which is awesome because that's where we're hosting all of our Hoopball listener and reader leagues. You can, of course, by the way, you can still join those. Let me know at Dan Besbris or at Ball with Neil, by the way. Neil Rochlani handling a lot of the placement for our listener leagues this year. That's awesome. Fantrax is great, and they're lucky to have you. It seems like a good pairing.
Yeah, it's been a great pairing so far. I've been doing rankings and writing some articles, some sleeper articles. So check that out. Head over to Fantrax. I'm also hosting a best ball draft. Beat Seth. I mean, no one's gonna beat me, but so it's like in quotes, but but you can give it a shot for $10. It's a best ball. You just draft and go. No setting lineups. It picks the best lineups for you. So that's fun. So head over to the Fantrax draft lobby over there and search for best balls in NBA, and you'll find that. But lots of good stuff going on there and lots of good coverage for all sports. So check it out if you get a chance.
Absolutely. They're a stellar, and I can still, I think, call them a young website, at least certainly when you compare them to the sort of the big boats like Yahoo and ESPN. But it's a website that has really dedicated itself to figuring out what users want, what fantasy users want, options that are available, things that commissioners can do that other websites don't allow. Fantrax, I think we can still safely call it up and coming, but it's basically arrived. So check that out, fantrax.com. Pretty easy to find. You can find Seth's stuff there. You can locate all of his goodies by going to his Twitter page. I think that's probably the easiest way. Again, that's Seth the Sportsman. Let's segue into the team, by the way, because you mentioned your first couple of picks, so now we can just start to break them down. You're hauling thunder here on your first couple of goes. The pick 12 and 13 were Paul George and Russell Westbrook. Doesn't really matter what order you took them in, although it happened to be George first. Is this, by the way, I guess my question on these two is, Paul George is very safe these days. Westbrook is coming off kind of a weird year. Is this a pick with the expectation that his free throw thing was a one-year blip and that comes back to where it usually is?
I hope so. I mean, I hope so for my sake. But I think he could get it back up to at least higher 70s. I don't know what was going on with that. Maybe he was just tired from jacking up all those other shots. I think that's a steal. I mean, if he only ends up missing a few games, and I think that's why he slid, because literally the news about the surgery came out, I think, the day we started the draft. So people were just avoiding it. But I'm okay if he misses like 10 games, getting him at 13.
Fair enough. I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about those guys. They're pretty obvious plays. Was there anybody slightly later or before that you might have preferred? Like, was there somebody at the end of round one that you were hoping would fall to you that didn't? Or is this, you feel pretty decent about the guys that dropped your way?
If Westbrook wasn't hurt, I wouldn't have taken Paul George there. I'll tell you that much. But I knew I could get both, and I could hedge my bets sort of. Because when Westbrook's out, Paul George is going to go crazy. So that's the only draft I have Paul George in. I wouldn't have taken him otherwise. I probably would have taken Westbrook and Embiid or someone like that. But yeah, I've seen Damian Lillard slide in a couple drafts. I've seen Oladipo slide in a couple drafts. I wouldn't have minded them if they had lasted a couple more picks. I would have taken them. But it's hard to go wrong at all in these first even three rounds. You're not going to get any bad players there.
The end of round 3, the beginning of round 4 were your next two picks, 36 and 37, Marc Gasol and Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson is just, Mr. Steady State. He does the same exact thing every single year. Marc Gasol, any concern about age, or you like the feel of Memphis this year, a team that seems like they're sort of ready to bounce back off a tank season? Any health stuff that bug you? How did you land on Marc Gasol here?
I don't know, man. I do think Memphis will be better. I mean, you have to assume Gasol is closer to 100%. I don't think he was all last year. Conley's back. They drafted Jackson. They added some players like Temple, and I'm trying to think who else. But I think they'll be better. They're not going to be a lot better, but I think those two players, Gasol and Conley mainly, will be decent, pretty good for at least up until maybe the end of March, where they might start sitting guys, which is fine. I'm not playing for March, especially in a roto league. But I like him. I like his blend. He didn't shoot the ball very well last year, which is probably a little bit to do with him kind of having to support the whole offense. If he can get it back up, he's never been an incredible shooter, other than his first few seasons. But if he can get it back up to 46% and continue to shoot his free throw percentages where he always has, he's making threes now the last 2 years. He still blocks 1.5 shots a game. I think he can be very valuable, especially when you're talking about a center that shoots above 80% from the line and is hitting threes now. He's one of those. If it wasn't for the specter of injury, he's one of the safer picks, I think, in that range. I would have taken Aldridge if he had gone a couple more spots. I would have rather had him or Draymond Green, but I'll take Gasol there. I kind of want to get, since I started small with George and Westbrook, I want to get a center eligible player, but one that had guard-like qualities with he offers great assists for a center, threes, and free throw percentage.
Interesting. Okay.
I sort of, because if I had gone and then taken someone like DeAndre Jordan or, someone else like that, I think I'm losing some of those. I'm continuing to boost the qualities with Gasol that I'm getting with George and Westbrook, I think.
I also, by the way, you mentioned briefly in there this March and April type thing. I feel like a lot of folks game plan for shutdowns too much. Yeah, right. Like it's generally the standout guys like Eric Bledsoe 2 seasons back, where Phoenix just totally shut him down, a healthy shutdown after the All-Star break. That type of stuff doesn't happen that often. The silly season tends to be guys trading days on and off, and so by the end of it all, they miss like 3 games towards the end of the year, which is soul-crushing if a head-to-head league is still going at that point. But in a roto league, you sort of have to ignore that stuff, don't you?
You have to, and I think it's, like you just said, it's a big mistake, and it's a myth that you have to prepare for these guys. You don't know who's going to get shut down. Nobody knows who's going to get shut down in reality. The Bledsoe thing you said, that was just random. You couldn't predict that. And it turns out there's a lot of other stuff going on as well. It wasn't just, we're tanking. There was underlying stuff. I mean, they weren't getting along well.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah. So, I don't think, even with the tanking last year, I don't think Gasol, they were full on tanking, and Gasol missed
it was 10 games, right? At total last year?
4, 5, 6. He missed 6 games from March 3rd on, including the last 2 of the year, which pretty much every team sits almost everybody if they're out of it those last couple games. So, yeah, it's more than maybe others, but I also think he had an injury too, so a legitimate injury at one point. That's not crazy. And Roto, what do you – just pick someone else to put in a spot. Pick up JaMychal Green or whoever. You know what I mean? And you have to maintain a games played limit anyway in Roto. So I don't mind guys sitting a couple games. Like, it keeps you under that threshold and allows you to throw in a Marshawn, what is his name? Marshawn Brooks?
Oh, yeah. He was going nuts.
Right, yeah. So, hey, I just picked up this guy. Now I get to play him because I have another guy sitting. Head-to-head, of course. Head-to-head, there is some legitimacy, but you really can't plan it. And I like to draft good players. I'll worry about that stuff later. The thing that bothers me so much, and it's this question, I always get these questions, is, should I make this trade for this trade? This guy has a really, really good fantasy playoff schedule. And I'm just like, dude, it's November. Like, if your team is that good that you're already playing the playoffs in November, then it's time to find another league or another owners that can challenge you. Because if you're already guaranteed the playoffs in November, then you're not challenging yourself enough. And that's just such a weird way of looking at things.
No, you got to convince the other.
Looking at playoff schedule to like January maybe, when I'm like, all right, this is where I'm sitting. This is how many games I have to lose in order to fall out of the playoff race, whatever. Okay, I get it. But like, you shouldn't make trades based on that until the playoff picture starts coming into sight.
Yeah, I think you can eliminate a few guys maybe that might have like a 2-game playoff week or something, but you certainly don't want to be, because the guy you trade away might play all of their playoff games, and the guy you pick up might miss half of theirs. You can't. You don't know. You don't
know if they may, a month after you trade them, they may break their leg. You know what I mean? And it doesn't. There's just no. I agree. A guy with a 2-game playoff, like, that's tough. But if you're gaining 1 extra game during the week or 2 extra games, I mean, from a bad player, no less, or like, you don't trade 1 good player for 2 mediocre ones because it gains you 2 games in the playoffs,
right,
4 months in the future. But yeah, it's just draft players that are good. I'm not saying to avoid, like, just take a player on a tanking team and think that he's not going to sit any games in those final few weeks. But again, in Roto, you have time to prepare for that. It's not a death knell, and you can get by. I think in our league last year, the league that we have, I had a few guys that like were just out. Like, I had Joel Embiid, and he didn't play like the last month, and I still came in first. I was just like, all right, I got what I needed from him, and now I'll just find somebody else that can hopefully, not put up the exact same stats, but I'll get someone else to fill in. He's already got me the points, rebounds, blocks that I want. I'm not, you kind of got to expect most guys, even now with the way guys sit, like 70 games is pretty good at this point if you're getting that out of somebody. No one's playing 82 games.
Yeah, anymore. Very few. You're completely right. The average last year, I think, was like 73 or 74. So most guys are missing a bunch of time. It's funny, by the way, that you were able to come in first. I came in second in that league, mostly because other teams hadn't given up on their tanking guys the last week, and I was able to make up a handful of games by basically dropping all of my guys that weren't playing anymore and rebuilding my team, like 70% of them with random Joes that were playing the last week, and I steamrolled from like 5th place into 2nd. So it worked out pretty well. You just have to be cognizant of this stuff, and like you said, you get your games played somewhere else if you have to, but you can get 73 games out of a really good player. In fact, sometimes it's better if you know they're going to sit for a week and a half, especially at the end of the year, because then you can just cut them loose. Round 5, round 6, Steven Adams and Ricky Rubio. I'm a big fan, by the way, of Ricky Rubio. I feel like he's perennially underrated. Everybody said he had some awful season last year, and he ended up pretty close to where he always is after kind of a slow start. Steven Adams at 60. I feel like this is one of those spots where this is a guy that, you can tell me I'm wrong, by the way, this is a guy that you were looking at and you thought, I don't think this guy's getting back to me at 84, so if I want him, I'm going to have to get him here.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was. I've had to do that a couple times with Adams in a couple of leagues. I like him a lot, and I think he's kind of in that range. To me, he's like the last, like, minus the free throw percentage, he's the last true, like, double-double, guaranteed double-double, awesome field goal percentage guy that's left. I mean, there are guys after that. Nurkic maybe, but who knows what they're doing with him there, and he's always hurt at some point. I like Adams a lot. He doesn't block a crazy amount of shots for a center, but he's a double-double machine. He had, I think, like the third or fifth highest field goal percentage in the league last year. He led the league in offensive rebounding, if that's a category in your league. I know points leagues maybe have that sometimes.
Dude could have like 20 rebounds a night if Westbrook didn't take all of them.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it also helps that Westbrook shoots a lot of them. So that's probably why he gets a lot of those offensive rebounds. But yeah, I mean, now I realize I have 3 Thunder on my team.
You do. You stockpiled them.
But yeah, I like Adams a lot. He's just a fun guy to watch play anyway. He hustles. He's got the hair, the mustache. Sometimes he shaves it, sometimes he doesn't. He's the New Zealand style of play, and I like him for fantasy. I think he's a good asset to have. He's a solid force and someone you can pretty much guarantee those stats. I think that Nerlens Noel will eat a little bit, maybe. Like I don't think he's going to take minutes away from Adams, but he may take a rebound away or something like that. I think that's actually going to be a fun duo, seeing Noel come off the bench there too. But yeah, I like Adams there, and I agree. It's someone that I knew would not make it back, 24 picks back. So that's why I took him there.
Round 7 and round 8, Dario Saric and Goran Dragic. Dragic, at least for me, is a guy that was for many years getting drafted kind of early, and now he's going pretty late in a lot of drafts, and it feels like this is maybe the pendulum swinging too far back in the other direction for a very safe kind of suddenly now like late middle round point guard. What are your thoughts on these two, Saric and Dragic, other than the fact that you wanted to get rhyming last name players?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know how to pronounce any of these players' names, to be honest. I'm not good. I didn't even know that was how Dario Saric.
Oh yeah, he's got like a Sean Connery thing. He wants it to be like an SH sound wherever you can. Dario Saric.
Dario Saric.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, that's.
This is, by the way, you should know that when the Lakers drafted Svi Mikhailiuk, I spent like 20 minutes one day watching YouTube videos to figure out how to say that last name. So this is like a personal minor league baseball player passion of mine, where I gotta figure it out. Although I haven't looked up the rookies for the NBA yet. I'll get them when I watch one of their games on League Pass. Anyway, Dario and Goran, if we're gonna go with first names, what do you think?
Dario, I think he's sort of like, to me, he's at least how I draft him, like a mini Gasol, where he's going to hit some threes, he's going to get some assists, he's not going to hurt your free throw percentage, and that's pretty much it right there. A power forward guy that can add some assists, threes. He has the blow up games whenever Embiid sits. I think even though the Sixers added guys like Wilson Chandler, I think he's pretty locked into that role, and he's a fun guy to watch. And then Dragic, Goran, like you said, he's just such a good value there. And I wouldn't have taken him any earlier either, but it's like, how do you not take him there? He's not going to put up the same stats he was putting up a couple years ago. I still don't know how he made the All-Star team last year, but it was probably his worst season, and he made the All-Star team.
Eastern Conference. Hooray.
Yeah, I feel like there was a couple other players that got snubbed that definitely deserved it, but I don't know. It's not like baseball where every team has to have a representative. I feel like there's had to have been someone. But anyway, his assists are down, and they're going to probably stay down with Richardson there and Tyler Johnson. And now Winslow wants to play point guard. Like, get the out of here, Winslow. But, Wade's going to get some assists. So those are eating into his assists. He's never been a prolific threes guy or prolific steals, but he does a little bit of everything. He's not going to hurt. Well, for last year, the field goal percentage wasn't great, but for a while, the guy was shooting 50% every year. Maybe he can get back up there if if he improved a little bit over the offseason, I don't know. But he's just a value there. And he's one of those guys that you know what you're going to get from him, and he's pretty safe, and he will have huge games, and I'm fine with that.
You got IT at 108. You already talked about him a little bit. At 109, Kelly Olynyk, which, this was a guy that we were very high on at Hoopball last year because he is another one of those centers you're talking about that does a whole bunch of things. He's like a guard at center, and if anything happens to Hassan Whiteside this year, potentially a trade, Olynyk is in line for a massive role on that team, and he's probably going to have a decent-sized one anyway. I like this pick. This feels like a nice value at 109.
Thanks. And I thought so too. And another guy that from doing previous drafts, I knew he wouldn't make it back around. And the way I design my team, if you look at it, I have very few blocks. I have very few big rebound guys. So when I drafted big men, because you do have to fill big men spots and you don't want to come last in rebounds or last in blocks, I want to get some assists. I want to get good free throw percentage. I want to get threes. And I think I did that with all of my big men aside from Adams. If you go to the next round too, you'll see that I also, well, not threes, but good free throw percentage too with Taj Gibson. So I kind of just, at a certain point you look and you're like, I'm never going to win blocks. Well, no, this is a roto league, but I'm not going to win blocks, but maybe I can come in 8th in blocks, which with my awesome free throw shooting, my 3-point shooting, my steals, my assists, that might be good enough to come to win the whole thing. You just don't want to be dead last in anything. And once I kind of punted blocks early on and didn't take any, 11, 12 rebound guys, I knew I needed to have some guard stats with my big men.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, certainly you just can't take those ones in Roto. That'll kill you.
No, okay.
I'm going to bunch up your last 4 here because now we're into 11, 12, 13, and 14. This is throwing darts time where hopefully one of these guys or 2 of these guys pan out in a nice way, and if all of them don't, BFD, big bleeping deal. You can cast them off into the ocean and grab somebody else. Taj Gibson, Kent Bazemore, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, no longer, by the way, in jail this year, and Markieff Morris. An interesting quartet for you there. Taj Gibson, who, looking back at this last year, had a wonderful first couple of months before, not surprisingly, Thibodeau ran him into the ground and he got tired. Bazemore quietly had a really nice season that I don't think anybody noticed, and he was a guy that helped me win my other Roto League, just coasting along with massive steals numbers. And Atlanta, to me, needs veterans out there to try to keep this thing from going totally nuts. KCP, I don't know, honestly, what the hell's going to happen for the Lakers. And then Markieff Morris, who, after he got healthy by midseason, and especially when John Wall went down, ended up putting up some really nice numbers late last year as well. So what am I missing on those 4? That's my cursory thought on each of them.
I think the one caveat with Bazemore is that they've been talking, there's been trade rumors almost all summer about him.
True.
Going to another team, which I think would hurt his value somewhat. I mean, he'd still get the threes, he'd still get the steals, so I'm not too worried there. But for as long as he's with the Hawks, he should be a beast. I mean, he's one of their only offensive guys that they have. And so I think he should be putting up good numbers. Gibson, like you said, he's just kind of a stabilizer, good percentages, not going to hurt you free throw percentage, gets you, he'll have the once a week, he'll get you a 13 board game. Pope, like you said, who knows? I'm really, honestly, the Lakers are a very curious team to me this year.
Yeah, totally.
Other than LeBron, I don't really know what anybody's going to do. And will Ingram slide down? Will Kuzma lose looks? Will Rondo start over ball? Will Pope lose looks to Kuzma? I have no idea. It should be fun to watch, but I'm really avoiding almost all of them in fantasy. Other than LeBron, I think I took Rondo in the last round of a draft the other day just because what the hell, it's a weekly league, so all I need is 2 out of 4 games for him to get 8 assists, and it helps me in assists. But the rest is kind of just hard to tell. And Pope, even though it's hard to tell what his role will be, he made 2.1 threes per game last year, 1.4 steals per game last year. Even if that gets down to 1.1 steals and 1.8 threes in the second to last round, that's enough for me. That's a 3 and steals guy, 3 and D guy is perfect for that spot. If it's a roto league and it's weekly, maybe I might not even start him unless he's got a 4-game week and someone else has a 2-game week or there's an injury or whatever. But I like having that availability there. And honestly, I know there's no adding or dropping because it's a mock, but he's the guy that's like, all right, he starts off slow. We can see he's not getting minutes. I'll pick up a hot free agent and drop him. So, and then Morris, like you said, he played well with that Wall. Wall has been known to miss a lot of games at times, and Morris is another guy. He's not going to hurt your field goal percentage. He's going to make a 3 or so for a power forward guy, score some points, chip in some rebounds. Last round, I mean, you're just kind of going with whatever there. I mean, I certainly would take him over some of the other guys that were taken here. So George Hill or...
It sounds like you're about to be attacked by a 17-pound beast.
I'm about to be attacked by a 8-pound beast.
I overestimated.
Yeah. An 8-pound force of nature that is our Chihuahua.
Outstanding.
Guards hit shadows when someone else drives their car outside.
Well, you just never know what a shadow might do. They come out of nowhere, man. They're petrifying. Seth Klein, fantastic as always, my man. I know you're buried under 3 sports right now, but when 1 or 2 of those comes to a close, can we dial you back in?
Well, baseball's pretty much over for me. I mean, it's 1 more week, and just all my head-to-head leagues are over. So just a few roto leagues, and there's not much managing that last week. So yeah, definitely
Beautiful.
Would love to come back soon.
Beautiful. The countdown to NBA opening night continues with Seth Da Sports Man. I got to make sure I pronounce it right so people type it right. Seth D.A. Sportsman on Twitter. He is Seth Klein. He's writing at Fantrax. That's fantrax.com. You can check that out as well. We've also got a coupon code associated with every guest that comes on the show between now and opening night of the NBA, and we'd like to let our guests choose the coupon code. I don't have any strong suggestions. We could go with something super simple like Seth, but I'll leave it up to you. What do you want the coupon code to be?
Does it have to be a certain amount of letters or anything?
No, I would say, simpler the better. So not something that's like 80 characters, but if you got anything funny.
How about Sharich?
Sharich, there you go. And it's spelled not at all like how it sounds. SARIC is the coupon code. It's $3 off the Hoop Ball Draft Guide. Hoop-ball.com is the website. Click on the Draft Guide link. Enter Sharich. SARIC. Tell him Seth sent you, because we're working on pronunciations here on this one. Seth, my man, thank you as always.
Thanks again for having me.
That was Seth Klein once again, the great Seth Klein, currently of Fantrax. He was a roving sort. He was a nomadic fantasy analyst the last time we talked to him. Good to see him landing at an excellent site where, by the way, all of our listener leagues are situated. Probably should have mentioned that earlier on the podcast, back at the beginning when I mentioned the listener leagues. Come join the listener leagues. Use the code SHARICH to get $3 off the draft guide, rate and review the pod, and all that good stuff. You know the drill, everybody. Again, big thank you to Seth Klein. Big hello to all of you that have found the podcast for the first time. Subscribing, by the way, is actually the easiest thing you can do to help us out. More subscriptions means the podcast moves up the list, and then more people can find it. And honestly, because this show will always be free, this will always be part of our Hoopball free platform. Whatever you guys can do to help us spread the word, whether it's a rating, a positive rating, or a subscription, or a retweet, all of these little things, they add up for us, and we really appreciate it. That is, I don't want your money here on this podcast. I don't want your money. What I want is 60 seconds of your time to go and click subscribe or review the show, again, if you like it in particular. But I take all constructive criticism I'm totally fine with. You can tweet that at me as well. And just little stuff like that powers our locomotive. Again, I am Dan Besbris. A wonderful Thursday to you, everybody. Coming up tomorrow, again, our final show of the week. We'll talk to Josh Lloyd about his team from this 9-cat industry mock, and then we'll continue with the pros. This is pros weeks here on Fantasy NBA Today, starting again on Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. We still got one more. I'm asking like the week is over. It's not. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.